Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to part
Hey!
two of this
All
week's
right.
stream.
All right.
Offline and in charge is what
All
we're
right.
calling it now.
So when we left off, we were talking about The Tax Collector,
Yeah,
which is the new film from David Ayer,
correct.
Portland's favorite director and John's favorite as well, and also one of mine. So The Tax Collector is a lot like his. It's basically like all of his other movies. And like I was saying before we left, I understand what they are: machismo, culturally inappropriate, racial stereotypes everywhere. They're all about gangsters and bad cops. And this one's not less about the bad cops. This isn't Street Kings or Harsh Times or anything like that, or even End of Watch. Um, it's it's about gangsters, and it has stars Shia LaBeouf and Bobby Soto. And I actually really like Bobby Soto in this. And basically, they play uh, two thugs for a LA crime boss who go around collecting taxes from the other gangs. That's their job,
Right.
right? And of course, something goes wrong, and they find themselves targeted, and their families and their friends all targeted by somebody more vicious. That is the entire plot. It is not much of a plot. It is a David Ayer plot. It is a David Ayer movie. Um, and there have been a lot of things written about David Ayer this week, as there always are whenever he has a movie like this that comes out. And people were attacking him for glorifying corrupt cops and things like that at a time when, police brutality is a thing that is people are talking about. His movies, I guess, they feel are um, inappropriate at this point in time, but the think piece that I posted about, which is on the playlist, and I can't remember who wrote it, but it really doesn't matter. Basically says all of his movies are like that. They all glorify um, police violence and corruption and things like that. And I've seen literally every single David Ayer movie. I mean everything.
Right.
From when he wrote Fast and the Furious to U571, which is his first screen credit, submarine movie. I've seen everything, literally everything. Suicide Squad, Bright, Fury, all of it.
I mean, we can run down it real quick. U571, The Fast and the Furious, Training Day, SWAT, Harsh Times, End of Watch, Sabotage, Fury, Suicide Squad, Tax Collector, and he's got Bright 2 coming up, along with The Wild Bunch. So, I mean, there's a theme to the kind of stuff he writes and does.
Yes, very, very much so. He makes masculine movies for dudes.
Right.
Right? That's the kind of movies that he makes. And yeah, a lot of his movies do deal with corrupt cops and corruption, but none of those guys are ever the hero in any of those movies.
Right.
None of those guys in none of those movies. In fact, in half of them, the cops die, or they get, or end up in jail. I mean, his movies did not glorify. In fact, they're usually commentaries on police corruption.
Right.
Else, I think if you come in, and this is why I don't really allow very many think pieces on our site. I don't like them. I don't like them because they usually, and most of the time, is people starting off with an opinion and then building their case afterwards.
Right.
Which is not the way you're supposed to do it. And the person who wrote this piece about David Ayer clearly had let's take down David Ayer agenda, because David Ayer is an easy target. David Ayer's an easy target. His movies make him an easy target. Right, his movies make him an easy target, and he's had a couple of high-profile duds like Suicide Squad, which I actually like, but a couple high-profile duds like Suicide Squad and Bright, which make him easy to go after. That's what this piece was basically doing, and I felt like I had to defend him in some sense. And as for The Tax Collector, I went in knowing exactly what the hell it was going to be, and in my review, I noted the one thing that really turned me off to it was Shia LaBeouf, because he plays a character who, and I understand what they were going for here. I just don't agree with it. I don't like it. I don't like that type of character. But he plays a white character who has basically appropriated his perceived mannerisms of the people he hangs around. Right. So he talks like a vato, he talks with the Latino accent, and he acts like he's Latino, but he's not. He acts like it. That's the way he's perceived them.
Is it appropriation or appreciation? Because if you grow up in that community and that's what you assimilate in, technically it is appreciation rather than appropriation.
I don't know. I don't know which one it is.
Straight up,
honestly, they don't go. They're not being nuanced enough for me to be.
Yeah, this is not that movie. Okay.
Yeah, it's not. This is the movie for that.
That's something I've never gotten, and I've never understood, and I just assumed it was because of where I've come from and all that. But like, I understand if you're making fun of somebody's culture, you're making fun of the way a group of people do something. But like the appropriation thing, like, isn't somebody else embracing somebody else's culture a good thing? I just never really understood that, unless they were taking it and like saying it was their own.
Well, it also depends on like what we do with that culture anyway. Like,
right on. Okay.
With like, with black culture, white people take that stuff and they use it as their own and profit off of it and make it, their own thing. But, there's so many other institutions and stuff that is hurting black people.
But also, white people will appropriate something from black culture and be praised for it where black people won't be.
Exactly.
One of my prime examples of this is black girls in high school who are told to take out their braids, their dreads, whatever like that. But when a white girl does it, they're considered exotic. Stuff like that.
I can get, but I see it used all the time to.
But that's the reason why. That's the reason why people frown on shit like this, because that's the kind of inequality that happens in regards to it.
Oh, because I see it being applied to something like somebody wearing, a white person or a Latin person wearing a kimono because they think it looks beautiful, and then being called out for appropriation. So that's where my confusion came from. So what you're saying makes sense. I can see how that would be an issue. But it's not somebody appreciating the culture. I guess that's why you said appreciate against instead of appropriate. Okay, I'm clear.
So
this has been your dumb white guy question minute.
There's always one segment like this per show.
Yeah. Well, we should have that.
So, all right. So, what did you think about the Tax Collector, though? Because I'm not gonna lie, I actually really dug it.
It was a David Ayer movie.
Super violent, really gory at times too, actually. But I thought there was really great intensity from Bobby Soto, who I had never seen before as an actor. I think he's fairly new.
Okay, so when you first said his name, you said, "Oh, Bobby Soto, who I really like." And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, "Did I miss him in something?" Because I've never seen him.
I know. I've never seen him before. Before now, I think he's really good as a guy who's who's coping with the fact that he's got this dual life. Like, the main thing and thrust of the movie is that he's got a family to watch and take care for, but he also lives this very violent life on the other side. That's a dynamic we've seen a lot of times before. But I think they did a really good job of showing it. And showing how it impacted him as he realizes that those two lives cannot possibly exist at the same time.
Yeah, there's an overlap.
There comes a point where he has to realize that it's not possible.
Right.
And how that affects him, I thought the movie did really well.
Well, and that's if people want to hate on David Ayer, what they can hate on him about is just being not completely original every time. I mean, and that's not even really something to hate on him about, because his movies all have a strain, and if you like his movies, I think you'll like Tax Collector. That's like telling
Scorsese he should stop making that mobster movie.
Right. I mean,
it's just nonsense that people say stuff like that. Scorsese makes mobster movies all the time,
and
telling
if you do it well,
variations of the same story, and we all love it.
Right. Exactly. I mean, and if the one thing that Ayer has maintained throughout his career.
What do you want to say?
No, I think it brings up a point, though, of, unless I don't know any better, Ayers is white, right? Does he have the right to tell this story about, a Mexican drug cartel? I mean, that's an argument that people could have.
Does he have the right to tell a story of a Mexican
drug cartel?
The movie's not necessarily about the Mexican drug cartel. It's about
right, but no one's going to tell, the Italian Scorsese, stop making that mafia movie, or that's not accurate, or that, whatever.
Yeah. I don't know.
My point of as we get into a conversation about who has the right to tell a story, or,
I can't remember Ayer's background, and I don't know his ethnicity.
He's a white guy from Bethesda, but I mean, 100%. He's from Bethesda, Maryland. He's basically me, but more talented. So there you go. But no, I mean, David Ayer's, all of his movies, they have the same, they go down the straight line of this tension that he is just really good at building, whether it's End of Watch or Training Day, as the day's going on, and
End of Watch,
Denzel's
I think, is his best movie still.
Uh,
I think End of Watch is still his best movie.
Training Day's up there, but I think, honestly...
Training Day's up there, but he only wrote that. He didn't direct it.
Oh, so I'm talking about everything he writes. He writes, and that's the genius of it, is he writes things that have, and it's not just his directing, it's his writing that creates such tension in the story.
I feel like Training Day is better simply because of Denzel, but the movie itself, if it were cast by anybody else, we would say that was just another David Ayer movie.
Well, yeah,
but it's Denzel that elevates it.
Training Day
End of Watch is
has
like great on its own.
Yeah, Training Day has to be great. Denzel's one of his top 3 movies, at least the top 3 iconic. I mean, at the end of his days, people are gonna still be saying King Kong ain't got nothing on me. And it's up there with his role as Malcolm X. It's up there with all this stuff. So I mean, it's hard to beat that. But End of Watch,
it's the one he got the Oscar for.
Is it really? Why am I not remembering that?
I don't know.
Oh, wow. How about that? But yeah, I mean, it's really good. I mean, everything else aside, if you can sit there and watch it, I didn't get the feeling, LaBeouf is a white guy and he's playing this character or what have you. But beyond that, I didn't get the feeling Creeper. Well, I mean this character as in this person that's appropriating, appreciating, whatever. But I didn't get the feeling watching the movie that it was being very exploitative or anything like that. It's just he took a story, whether it's accurate or not. It's fun to watch, and the tension that builds up, the place that you feel these people in, when you can actually feel the characters on screen's lives falling apart or getting to that crossroads where their lives not going to be the same. That's a good movie to me, and Tax Collector had that.
Does a good job. It's getting shit on pretty hard though right now, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
What else? Do we have any other movies to talk about before we get to news?
I know you've been talking a lot about the Burnt Orange Heresy, and I'm wondering how much that has to do with Elizabeth Debicki. But we didn't see that. But what do you think? It has
a lot to do with Elizabeth Debicki.
That's what I figured. That's what I figured.
Whenever I question why you like something, I'm always like, all right, which girl is in?
That's not always the case. Like there's no girl to like in the Tax Collector.
So, what's beautiful about this, though, Cortland, you being here, is before you started coming on, all the viewers were led to believe that I was the misogynistic one, and now we're seeing the other side.
Wait, you still are? You still are?
Not for the last 2 weeks. The tables have turned. Yeah.
No, Elizabeth Debicki is fantastic in the Burnt Orange Heresy. Which the interesting thing about that movie, and I can't remember the guy who directed it. I think it's an Italian filmmaker whose name I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
It released, I believe it was Sony Pictures Classics released it back in March, and I tried to watch it back then because I was going to review it, and I couldn't make it 20 minutes into it before I turned it off. I was like, I'm bored.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and then I watched it a week ago, like to review it again, and I couldn't get enough of it. It was really weird. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's pandemic related or something, but. What's that, Corlin?
The quarantine changed you.
It's right. Possible. It is entirely possible. Something has changed from then to now.
I mean, is there some? So here's this: not hired to steal a rare painting from one of the most enigmatic painters of all time. An ambitious art dealer becomes consumed by his own greed and insecurity as the operation spins out of control. It doesn't really sound like topical enough to be influenced by this, but that's a question that I always have when I see movies, especially when I disagree with the consensus. I'm like, was I just in a different place? Was I just in a different mood when I was watching this? Because it can really greatly affect it. But what was it you loved about it so much?
It's a movie that I feel is what Velvet Buzzsaw should have been. And I remember seeing Velvet Buzzsaw at Sundance and being super disappointed by it. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people like it, and it's dark humor and its take on art world critics and stuff like that. But I like it. I like what they do with it in Burnt Orange Heresy better. Clay Spang is an art critic, and he's just. It's basically about two opposing conflicts, and Elizabeth Debicki plays the opposite end of this conflict. And he's a guy who sort of believes that art is best for what it conceals about the truth about the world.
Mm-hmm.
And she thinks art reveals what is true about the world. And it's interesting that they have these conflicts because they have this intense passion for one another. The very first scene of the movie is very funny. He is standing up in front of a bunch of, clueless Americans giving a lecture about a piece of art. And, he puts it up there and he tells them about it. He's like, anybody want to print of this? Nobody wants it. And then he tells them this elaborate story about the artist and how they painted this piece while they were in a concentration camp, and that his art is what saved him from being killed at the camp. Because he would make paintings for the soldiers. And after he tells the story, he's like, "So does anybody want a print of this?" All of a sudden, everybody wants it, right? And then he goes and he tells them, "Oh, by the way, this story's all bullshit."
Did the hands go all down?
I did this in 5 minutes right before I came on here, basically.
Oh,
And
wow.
and he tells him, but he's like, but you see, the value you have on this painting was completely created by me. I'm the critic. You should fear my power.
I mean, he's not wrong. That's a really interesting take because
it is interesting, and he has this philosophy throughout the movie, and it plays out in interesting ways as he gets wrapped up in this scheme. It's almost like a heist scheme, but not quite. Where he's hired by an art connoisseur played by Mick Jagger, who was really good in this, by the way.
Really,
really cool in this. Everybody's cool in this movie. This is a super cool movie. Like everybody is very slick, very posh. Which is I think probably the reason why I was bored by it in the beginning, but whatever. But now I like it. Whatever. But anyway, he's hired by Jagger's character to acquire a painting from a recluse who's like the most legendary artist in the world right at the moment. He's hired to acquire a painting from him because he doesn't paint anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it devolves into what is essentially a murder plot. It takes a turn that you don't expect. And the movie is kind of like, the ending, the way it twists into a murder story, is not what you expect. But then again, one of the key points of the movie is that you should never accept a painting accept a painting for what it is based simply on the brushstrokes. You should always look further, look deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the movie's trying to tell you. And I think the plot plays out in that way as well. But yeah, Elizabeth Debicki, her character, opposite Kleist Bang, who Kleist Bang was in The Square, which is another movie about art world and art critics. So it's like art movies everywhere all of a sudden.
Right.
She is just fantastic as his polar opposite. She needles him all the time about things, and she makes really smart and witty comments about art, and that pisses character off and sends him careening in different areas. It's just a great movie, and yes, she's super fine in this movie too. So I'm not gonna lie.
I'm just amazed that she hasn't really broke huge yet. She's got everything about her that seems like she would break huge. I mean, even right after Gatsby.
I loved Elizabeth Debicki. First time I saw her was in The Great Gatsby, the one with Leonardo DiCaprio, where she played my favorite character from that movie, which is Jordan Baker. Jordan Baker is my favorite character from The Great Gatsby. So I love anybody who plays that character. But I had never seen her before, and I was like, "Who is she?" And she's been great in everything she's ever done. Remember her in Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Right.
Although that was like my least favorite role of hers, honestly. But she's just fantastic. I think this is
in The Tale, that HBO
yes
TV movie with Laura Dern.
Yep.
That was such a powerful performance.
Yep. Totally. But Burnt Orange Heresy is not going to be for everybody. It's very wordy, very talky. You have to pay attention to every single thing that people say. You can't half-ass watch it. So it's probably not going to be for everybody, but I dig it.
I'm in now just because the art world is something that has always mystified me, or fascinated me, I should say, and not so much because of the talent.
You're probably right the first time, mystified.
Well, probably because it
mystifies me sometimes.
The fact that you have art that is like a splotch of red and a splash of blue, and it's worth $16 million. I mean, it's weird when that conspiracy theory about the art world all being just a high stakes money laundering scheme by the world's rich actually makes sense. I mean, because it really has to do with that. Like, I could go out and do a Banksy type painting tomorrow, it wouldn't be worth $6, but Banksy does the same thing. It's worth $6 billion. So it's crazy to me. So I'd like to see that.
It's true that the stories behind paintings are what makes them, right?
For sure, yeah.
And that's really what it is. Which is why that opening scene in the Burnt Orange Heresy means so much, because it's true.
Oh yeah,
it's true. A painting's worth is totally dependent on the value we place on it. So, anyway.
Yeah. So
I'm mystified by the art world too. My ex-wife was an artist, a painter, and so I got wrapped up in it, and I like it. I love going to galleries and looking at. And, all the time. I love it, but
I appreciate art. I just don't understand the culture behind it. I guess is
I appreciate the fact that they can do stuff that I never could.
For sure,
I can't draw with crayons, so it's what it is.
So we also got Waiting for Barbarains. I don't know if we want to talk about that at all, because there's a lot of news this week too. We're coming in on about.
We want to skip
15 minutes.
Waiting for the Barbarians, even though it has been the most read review of the week on the site, because people, you put Robert Pattinson's enough already, by the way, just putting him in a movie. People want to read it. Robert Pattinson, Mark Rylance, and Johnny Depp, of all people, all in the same movie. People are interested. And I actually quite like it. It's directed by the guy who did Embrace of the Serpent a few years ago, and Ciro Guerra, and he does movies about colonialism, basically. And this is a different take on it. All three of his movies that he's done have been about colonialism. This is about the brutal side of it. So, if you're interested in that topic, this is a movie you want to check out. But yeah, we're not going to go into it too much.
Cool. So, because we do have tons of news, I don't know if we want to get into DC FanDome first or cover the rest of the little stuff first, but there's all kinds of things happening. DC FanDome had tons of news come out this week, but let's go through the other stuff first real quick. I mean, it sounds like both of you are most excited to talk about. Sorry, both of you are most excited to talk about Captain Marvel 2 news. It's got a director apparently. What do you guys think of that?
Nia DaCosta is going to be directing Captain Marvel 2. Nia DaCosta, she broke out with Little Woods, which is a fantastic film. Tessa Thompson and Lily James, great movie. She's doing the Candyman sequel, whatever you want to call it,
right?
From Jordan Peele. So yeah, I think this is a great move. She's the first Black filmmaker to do a Marvel movie. It's good stuff. What do you think, Cortland?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what she does with it. When I saw that Candyman was going to have that shadow puppet part of it, that kind of thing, I was blown away by that. So whatever she brings to Captain Marvel is great. And I'm really excited to watch her do her thing.
I feel like because they're bringing her in, I feel like they're going to make Monica Rambeau a bigger deal.
Yeah.
Monica Rambeau, one of the women who's had the moniker of Captain Marvel, was in the first movie as a child. She grows up, and we know that she's in another Marvel movie or another series. I think she might be in Doctor Strange too. I can't remember which thing she's showing up in. We don't know how she'll show up though. We don't know if she'll show up as Photon or Spectrum or shit. Maybe she'll show up as Captain Marvel. We don't know. I mean, who knows? But I think that hiring DaCosta tells me they're going to put some emphasis on Monica Rambeau. You agree, Cortland?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And especially her mom is played by I forget her name, but she's going to be in the new Bond that was supposed to come out in April.
Yes.
Pushed back. So especially if that, whatever, amid COVID and all that, whatever that does for her career, whatever Bond does for her career, I feel like that is definitely going to be amplified, and they're going to profit off that in Captain Marvel 2. So of course it makes sense that, Nia DaCosta.
You're talking about Lashana Lynch, right?
Time that we had a Black woman.
Lashana Lynch. Say that last part again, Cortland.
It's about freaking time we have a Black woman in the director's seat of a Marvel film. Like it's time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
they're long overdue for it. It's long overdue to have a Black woman direct a superhero movie. Period.
Yeah.
other than, well, I can't remember who directed.
What about the Eternals? I could have sworn.
I thought Eternals was
The Eternals is Chloe Zhao.
Chloe Zhao.
Oh.
Chloe Zhao. So.
I mean, and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on her first name, but is it Cindy Yan?
Oh yeah, Kathy.
Kathy, sorry, Kathy Yan did
Birds of Prey. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is Marvel, I know that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's fine.
I don't know why I'm
we're talking about
thinking.
superhero movies in general.
Yeah.
There haven't been very many black women to do very many of them.
Am I missing some news? It wasn't Ava DuVernay directing Eternals?
Ava DuVernay is doing.
What am I missing here? I got something mixed up.
No, Ava DuVernay is doing the joint for DC Comics.
Oh, that's right.
New Gods. She's doing
New Gods. Yep. Okay.
She's doing New Gods over there. Well, who knows when that's going to drop? But honestly, we might hear about it at DC FanDome. I mean, DC FanDome is taking place on August 22nd, and it's shaping up to be everything that Comic-Con wasn't. Comic-Con at home was a big disappointment.
Yeah.
We're not going to lie. In terms of, like, apparently they got like no people watching it, which is sad. But in terms of like big news dropping, there wasn't a lot of it. DC FanDome has everybody showing up: Robert Pattinson, Zack Snyder, Matt Reeves, the entire cast of Suicide Squad. There's supposed to be a sneak peek of that. They were going to get a sneak peek of everything. It seems like they're doing the Warner Brothers Hall H presentation that they do at Comic-Con every year, except they're doing it virtually.
Well, that's what was missing from Comic-Con.
Awesome.
Because Comic-Con just felt very, very, guerrilla marketing type. It felt like, hey, this isn't actually being put together by anybody, but we're all just going to get on the Zoom calls, and then we'll slap a logo on it at the end. This seems like the only thing I'm pissed off about.
This is a very coordinated effort by them,
right?
And it's shaping up to be really big.
The only thing I'm pissed off about is that if you go to DCComics.com and look at their official FanDome site, they have this awesome-looking map of the global experience. And it just looks like the coolest freaking theme park you've ever seen. You got the Watchverse, the Funverse, Insiderverse, Kidsverse, Uverse, all this stuff, and the Hall of Heroes in the middle.
I don't know why you care, because you would only be able to go to Kidsverse.
Well, it's enough just to go there. I think I'd be happy for what I have.
I think you'd be very disappointed.
I don't know. Does DC own Mighty Mouse? I don't know. If they do, I'm in.
Isn't Teen Titans still on Cartoon Network? Wouldn't that count as kids?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So. Yeah.
And Titans.
Unless you mean like the. Oh no, that's Titans. That's the one that's on.
Titans, the show.
No, I'm talking about like Teen Titans, like the little animated. Yeah.
Did we ever talk about Titans, the show, on here? I don't know if I've ever talked about it.
I've never watched it.
You haven't? So. It's so good, man. It's so good.
Word for it.
Yeah, I guess you'll have to. But it was all of the DC Universe shows, in my opinion, have been good. Doom Patrol has been awesome.
I've heard a lot about Doom Patrol. Maybe one day I'll watch it.
Yeah, even Swamp Thing wasn't bad. I'm still kind of surprised it got. I think that was just poor timing, but yeah. So, I mean, do we know exactly what the FanDome experience? You said it's going to be like the Hall H, but is it going to be similar to Comic-Con where they're just doing Zoom calls and then running a clip in the middle?
It's going to be 24 hours of virtual stuff. I don't know if we'll really know until it actually starts happening. So, but I actually might need some help to cover that one. That seems like it's going to be a lot. We'll see.
It's going to be a lot in a small period of time, so we're going to want to probably divide and conquer on that.
What's that, Cortland?
I was just asking when it was, the 21st.
August 22nd. So it's just one day, 22nd. So, what else we got?
James Wan is doing a Knight Rider movie. That's amazing.
I knew you'd be excited about that.
I am, but I'm not, because here's the thing. Knight Rider was such an 80s concept, but it also fits perfectly right now with, you could see Elon Musk coming out with a Tesla that's like Knight Rider. You could see it happening. But so much Kit is such an iconic character. I'm going to call it a character because he is. That when you change him, it's not the same. Like, when the Knight Rider TV show came out, I seriously doubt they're going to run with the 85 Trans Am. If they do, I'm happy for it. But they more often or more likely than not, they will change the car. And so
I think David Hasselhoff is the more iconic one out of that duo. But
you think so? You think Hasselhoff?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, Kit didn't have a beach show, that's for one. But I mean, I think You show well, and he's big in Germany too. So, okay, well, Hasselhoff's maybe bigger, but not in my world. My world, the car it wins, and I think James Wan was able to do with Aquaman something pretty amazing. He was always already kind of established, so he didn't get full credit for that. But he took the lamest character, made him one of the coolest characters.
I'm cautious about this just because this is not the first, second, or third time we've heard about a Knight Rider or anything. Right. So I'm just like, well, I'll wait and see when it happens, because it is tough to make that work.
It is. It's not easy
in live action form. The part of the reason why it worked in the '80s is because we were accepting of a lot of goofy shit in the '80s.
Yeah, its competition was Airwolf.
Now.
Airwolf was the competition, and that just had a good theme song.
Last week, Travis, you talked about Scream and whether or not that needed a reboot and like what they would do with it. I kind of feel the same way about Knight Rider. Do we really need this right now?
Yeah.
Like probably. What else is there to say? And
no,
I think
it's junk
point,
food,
John, sure. Of like doing kind of like the Elon Musk point that you just made. I mean, that makes sense, right? But I don't necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, I would watch something that was like Knight Rider meets 2001: A Space Odyssey. Not being able to get out of the car because the AI is being an asshole. Like, I totally watch that. But
I feel like if you're gonna reach back for stuff like this, you need to do it ironically or do it sort of like
you got a 21 Jump Street.
Do it sort of like that, or do it like how Cobra Kai uses Karate Kid or something like that. You need to do something different with it rather than just trying to use the same concept. Like, the concept's not enough. You got to do something new with it.
I honestly, even though Fast and Furious is still huge, I still think the idea of a guy and an alpha male with a cool car is so dated as being something that people look for. I mean, it's not what everybody's into these days. So I think if you're going to do it, you have to do 21 Jump Street. You can't even go the other way and make it something actual. I think it's almost got to be MacGruber at that point.
It's got to be the right filmmaker to do something like that. It would have to be like a Michael Bay type to do that sort of movie and do it with his brand of seriousness.
I would love that
because
movie.
he takes that he'll take that stuff seriously even if we don't.
Yeah.
And then, so it's kind of like a movie like Pain and Gain would be right now. Like, Pain and Gain is a movie that takes itself super seriously, even though it's dumb. It's dumb. Or more accurately is maybe Six Underground. Six Underground is stupid as hell, but Michael Bay takes that shit seriously. He'll take the concept seriously, even though it's ridiculous.
And it's better for
it. I guess.
I also don't see it as a theatrical release. Like, if you're gonna have a Knight Rider reboot, like, that's what Netflix is for, right? Like,
100%.
Yeah, I don't see it as a theatrical release at all.
Yeah. I agree.
I mean,
how much time we got left,
John? We are at the end. So I was going to let us go for another minute or two. We are not beholden to our stream stuff, but just to be careful, I'm keeping it at an hour.
Well, we don't want it to take 4 or 5 days to get the edit in.
Yes. Hey, that was one time. And I found out what happened, by the way, right before I started here today. So I'll clue you in on that a little bit later. I think the only thing we had left to touch on in the news, let me check my news and notes. Your Dirty Dancing sequel, obviously, and Star Trek being on hold. I don't know if you want to touch on those at all.
Star Trek thing is interesting to me, only because they can't seem to get that franchise going movie-wise. Yeah, they've had 3 movies, but none of them have been like gigantic hits under J.J. Abrams. They've been okay.
The first one wasn't a gigantic hit?
No. It was a hit, but not a gigantic hit. And second and third ones have done worse. And then they were going to do the 4th one that was going to have S.J. Clarkson direct it, who's been the first female Star Trek director. That fell through, partially because of Hemsworth and all those guys Hemsworth was supposed to come back, and Pine and all those guys were having contract issues. That fell through. And then you have the Tarantino thing, which they've been talking about, the R-rated movie that he was going to do. Apparently, based on this news, that movie could still happen. He dropped out of it, though. Tarantino's out of it. He's not going to do it anymore. But the movie could still happen because it still has a script from Mark Smith, the guy who did Revenant with Leonardo DiCaprio. And they're saying it involves 1930s gangsters. It's mostly Earthbound. and it's based on the season 2 episode, which at least they don't say this, but I know enough about Star Trek that I know this episode they're talking about. It's called A Piece of the Action, which is a season 2 Star Trek episode where they land on a planet where everybody's basically living the lives of 1920s gangsters. So it's kind of one of those episodes of Star Trek that it's more humorous than anything else. So it's obviously based on that to some degree. And I'd be very interested in seeing that movie, that version of Star Trek on a big screen. The problem is I don't think any way, shape, or form Paramount would let that happen. It just seems weird. But the big news out of it though is that Noah Hawley's film, is he was hired to do a movie, which would have been a total reboot. He's the guy who did Fargo and The Unfortunate Lucy in the Sky. He did those movies. He was hired to do that. That movie's on hold now, which I think we've all been able to see coming for a while because there hasn't been any movement on it since he was hired. So it's on hold. Who knows what will happen with it? We don't know where they're going with Star Trek right now. It's kind of in the same place that Star Wars is in, which is that the movies have kind of fallen off, and now they've found better success in streaming. Star Trek is better in streaming right now, finding more success now in streaming than it has on the big screen. So why fuck with it?
Well, yeah, and I mean that may not.
I don't give
matter.
a shit about Star Trek, by the way. I think Star Trek sucks for the most part. But
I'm just wondering what the benefit of an R-rated Star Trek would be, because to me, like, that was always one of the draws of the future in it, and like the signs that everything was perfected is that you didn't have foul-mouthed sailors and crazy stuff going on, but
it
also
sounds like a really lousy future.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's like Demolition Man, but even further ahead. I think streaming is where that happens, and they could make these movies if what was it, the Gray Man, $200 million movie coming out. If that does really well and they see it succeed, then the big budget, big name properties will start, taking a dip in the streaming pool, and that's exactly where that can happen.
Cortland, any thoughts on Star Trek? Do you care about Star Trek?
What?
Do you like Star Trek?
I like the original, like 1966 or 1960 version. I've seen a few of those, and I like those. I saw the first Star Trek the day it came out, and then 24 hours later I saw it again. I liked that a lot.
I saw it twice in 2 days. So
yeah, I like that. It's hit or miss, and I think I'm not like huge into it. I'm not like a turkey or anything.
Yeah, me neither.
I think Travis, your point of keeping it on streaming, like if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I think streaming is sort of, why is it bad that it's on streaming and working there? Like, why do we have to,
Right. Yeah, I never felt like Star Trek has never been gigantic on the big screen, even when they were using the original casts.
Yeah.
Star Trek is one of those things that it is very niche. Like, you're a Star Trek fan, and there aren't a lot of casuals who go in to see a Star Trek movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not the way it is. I mean, I don't know any casual Star Trek fans like who are like dying to see a Star Trek movie. Like, there's none of them.
Yeah,
right?
I think
they don't exist.
The new movies, the Abrams movies, brought a few more of those people out.
That was the point of them. The point of them was to make them more. But then again, see, the drawback was that all of my classic Star Trek fans hate those J.J. Abrams movies. Yeah, because they're not like Star Trek. They're not about the code or anything like that. They're not about the science, the discovery of it. They're about action. Yeah. So so you're sacrificing one to get the other, and I don't know if they ever really got enough either.
Yeah.
So if Star Trek dies, it dies, of course. Just kidding.
And on that note, what do we have next week? Anything major coming out next week that we look forward to?
I don't know.
We still have a couple weeks until DC FanDome, so that'll be 2 weeks from now. We'll be able to talk about that.
I don't know. We'll saddle Cortland with some stuff to review for next week. I don't know. I'm not gonna. You know what I have for next week? I have Spree, which is that movie with Joe Keery that was at Sundance, where he plays this the kind of an Uber driver who goes on a murderous rampage. I actually just watched it very early this morning.
Mm.
And Project Power, which is the superhero-ish movie with Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Oh yeah.
And then I'll probably try to watch tonight. So
well,
that's what I've got.
So we got some things coming out next week then, and until then, this has been Cinema Royale. Check us out every day at punchdrunkcritics.com. Make sure you go into Twitch and follow Travis, cinematic_enforcer. On Twitter, I'm Punch Drunk John. Travis is Punchy Critic, and Cortland, I gotta put yours on here as well. What's your Twitter handle?
At Portlandia.
Hey, she remembered it this week. It's nice to remember it.
So check us out there. Also, twitter.com/PDC Movies to follow our official Twitter stream. And we appreciate you watching. Until next week, we're out of here.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Later.